Good morning, LBC Radio. My name is Coy Rosen, and you're listening to the Story Podcast. Today, I have on a super awesome guest. But before we get into that, if you would really like to support us, we have merchandise available. We have stickers, and we have hoodies and shirts with the logo on the front, and the first 50 guests on the back, including Mr. Caleb Wilber. Starting playing guitar at 9 years old, he cut his teeth on multiple instruments in the garage bands, and around that time, he began to learn the fundamentals of art, of producing, and arranging at a very young age. In his high school years, he was an instrumentalist in a hardcore/metal bands located in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. After high school, he graduated from Lancaster Bible College in 2016 with a bachelor's degree in both worship arts and biblical studies. LBC gave him experience in playing jazz, blues, and church music on guitar, as well as other ensembles and performance groups. During this season of his life, he developed a love for creatives and pop music. And after graduating, he then moved to Des Moines and later to Columbus, Ohio, and served as a worship leader/pastor for two different multi-site churches for 7 years. During his time on staff, God began stirring his heart for the creatives and the Kingdom Church. And in 2022, he and his wife, Jen, founded Freedom City Collective. Freedom City is a team of creatives that spans 4+ states and that resources the worship and arts needs of the local church and provides music for events and conferences. Their whole team strives to create a place of belonging for like-minded creatives, to build a platform for creatives, to support the mission of God, and share their work to stir love and affection towards Jesus. Caleb and Jen travel all over the Midwest, leading worship for conferences, church gatherings, and other events. Caleb and Jen, on their own, have released their first single, Chaos, in 2020, then released With Me in 2021, and released their newest single, An Impossible, in 2022. Caleb continues to produce music for other artists, co-writing with other worship leaders and pastors, and writing and producing for Caleb and Jen. And you can follow them and their adventures on their Instagram links at Caleb Jonathan W, Caleb and Jen at Freedom City Collective, and on Facebook at Caleb and Jen, and their websites calebandjen.com and freedomcitycollective.com. All links will be in the description. All links will be also in the description. I was so close to getting through it all.
So close. It was a mouthful.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Minus shortcomings this morning.
Always have them.
Always have them. So tell me, you got started young. What inspired you to pick up the guitar?
Man, so I actually started playing piano, and that was in first grade, and I hated it. And I loved being outside. What's that?
How dare you?
I know. So I started playing piano and just sitting for long periods of time, reading, I don't know, chopsticks, music, things like that. Not a fan. So when I was young, I think it was third grade, I was like, Lord, what do you want me to play? I don't know why I asked what would have prompted that, but I heard him say in my heart, he was like, I want you to play guitar. So I was like, okay, I'll play guitar. My mom wanted me to play saxophone, which is just, I mean, it's a cool instrument now, but at the time I was like, that's not a cool instrument, Mom. So my dad went and got my first acoustic guitar, and I started playing that, and the rest is history. So that would have been fourth grade.
So tell me your life through then. Because picking up a guitar and then deciding to do music for the rest of your life, that's a step and a leap and a half. What was the process through that?
Yeah. Man, I think I was always caught between sports and music. And so I was attending, I'm not Mennonite, but I was attending a Mennonite school in Lidditz. And it was basically, at the time, we had a worship team, and it was me with a bunch of girls. And so I would pick the music, right? Like, we'd pick the songs for the week, and then we would do chapel on Wednesdays. And I just started developing a love for playing music with other people. And I think that was kind of the first initial time that I was exposed to, it wasn't just me sitting at home playing, worship songs or whatever.
Right.
And so that kind of bridged into some friend groups that we started a band, our first band. My friend Brendan, growing up, awesome guy. We started a band called CBJ. It was Caleb, Brendan, Jesus. And so didn't go anywhere, but we were recording on a tape deck, and It was horrible, but it was awesome. And it was so brand new. He had an electric guitar. So it was the first time I was ever shown an electric guitar, which I was like, that is way cooler than acoustic. And so, yeah, that was 6th, 7th, and 8th were kind of when that really took root in my life. And I was in sports at the time, but I think when I hit my freshman year of high school, my love for music kind of deepened more, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do sports anymore. Plus, I was too short to be playing basketball. I was only like 5'5", 5'6", so I was just like, this is not gonna go very well. Everybody kind of exceeded my height at the time, so I was like, I think music it wasn't a last ditch effort, but it was just kind of one of those that I was like, man, this is, I really love it. And so to be able to do it with people that you love, too, being a musician, it's a joy. So it's fun to do things alone, but you get to do it with other people, and it's a blast.
That's super interesting because it always seems to be with guitarists for whatever reason. Every past guitarist has always been sports or music.
I find the same thing with drummers. I find that they're always like, and they're some of the best athletes. Like they're just amazing at both. And I'm like, how do you do that? Because I'm kind of hack. Like I can keep up, but I don't exceed well in any particular sport.
It's funny. I also had that same experience as a kid as well. As either do soccer or do music. And I was the lead and one of the players. So I had to be music. Yeah. And from then on, I'm just like, okay, it's music forever.
Yeah, I get it. And I think that there's still, they're two valuable skills, but
for sure.
Music, I think when it comes, I'm biased obviously, and
yes.
Most of your audience is going to be musicians too, but we just have a unique way of learning where the kinesthetic, the auditory and visual, we're very balanced in that. And I think that for athletes, it's a little bit different. They're not as equal in those. So I find it fascinating. Like it sets you up. It makes me sad when they remove it from high schools and middle schools now, because I'm like, man, like
sports or music?
Music, sorry.
Oh, gotcha.
They're pushing into sports, and the music is being lost, and I'm like, man, like they're just good. Like people that do music, even to some degree, like it helps them being a balanced learner. I love that.
And it helps them. I've heard it, the whole music therapy side of it. It helps them be nice and relaxed. Granted, if you do it properly.
Right.
There's always moderation.
Yeah.
But it helps them with math learning, and it truthfully, the human experience is music.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how we get our emotions out. That's how we commune with each other across many different barriers.
Yeah.
Is through music. I really do think it's a loss that music is being put down to the wayside over sports, which granted, they're both equally important. Sports teaches teamwork, camaraderie. Mm-hmm. It's very good to just let out all that angst as a teenager on the field and just go for it. But music is equally as important, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think they're different skills. Like the teamwork involved when you're in sports. That you bring up such a good point. Like you can be in a band, but there's also a lot of composers that I've heard that are horrible to work with. Their personalities, you're just like, I don't want to be in a room with you for like 15 hours because you're too particular, you're too stuck up, or they're used to doing things alone. Yeah, that's so good. And the other thing, I love music. I love being able to do that with other people. I think if you didn't have that component, you end up being kind of a rude, mean person,
Yeah, especially if you work alone. It's because there is the teamwork aspect of working together as a team, whether it be an ensemble or a worship team. Or because everyone's looking off each other and working off each other to make a whole cohesive piece.
Yeah,
and it's important as musicians that we don't forget that it's about the piece more than the people.
Mm-hmm. So good.
So, what made you choose Lancaster Bible College?
Well, I didn't want to go to school. Admittedly, I was pursuing music, and in high school I look back and I was a very uneducated musician. Most guitar players are. They don't know how to read music. They go by ear. And so I was like, man, I want to go to Nashville and I want to be a session guitar player. That just sounds so fun. Yeah. And at the time I didn't know that most session guitar players are homeless.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that. But yes, many of them, if you're trying to make it, you're sleeping on couches, you're waiting for your next tour to come around. Like
right.
the lifestyle is very different. And like, I have one of our friends within Freedom City. He's a drummer down in Nashville, and he's just like, man, with the housing prices and all that, it's like it's getting even harder to make that sustainable for musicians that widely haven't had their incomes raised since the 80s.
Yeah.
And so it just gets very challenging. So anyway, I didn't know any of that at the time, but just learning like what does it take to get there? It's a lot of sacrifice. You could be a great player, but you still have to understand and develop relationships and all of that. So I was in my junior year. I was pretty distant from the Lord, but a winter retreat with my youth group brought me back and into relationship with Jesus. And as I got closer with him, I started discerning like, again, it was the same when I was in third grade asking God, what do you want me to play? I heard the same thing. I want you to go to school and I want you to study worship. And I was very active in my church in the worship area. And but I was also, having the history of bands. So I was kind of doing those simultaneously. And so I was like, where do you want me to go? And I was like, okay, God, if it's up to me, I want to go to Australia. I want to go to Hillsong Institute because that just sounds so fun. And I get to get out of Lancaster. Like I wasn't always down on Lancaster County, but to get out sounded like a blast. And then God's like, no. And then I was like, okay, well, what about Grand Canyon University in Colorado? And God's like, no. And I was like, well, what about Belmont in Nashville? And he's like, no. And then I went to the college that my parents went to in the 80s. And I was like, man, like God just paved the way between, I did not have good grades in high school. And I, and God paved a way for finances for me to come. And so, faithfully, I was like, okay, Lord, like you are clearly laying out these steps through things that I'm fearful in, and you answered them. Mm. And so I was like, okay, I'll go to LBC. I stayed at home with, we lived in Lidditz, and I commuted all 4 years. And it was a really great 4 years. I grew a lot. I kind of tell people studying at LBC was kind of like Bible boot camp for me. Mm. It provided a lot of fundamentals going into ministry. And there's still a whole lot once you get out. I thought I was more prepared than I was. And then I got into the real world and I was like, oh my goodness, like there's a whole set of stuff that you do need to grow in and develop in. And, but I was able to lean on a lot of that education that I had gotten, that I could resort to, or, I had interned at several churches, was involved, with vertical worship out in Chicago for a minute. Mm. And so being able to see how different churches do things, large churches, gives you kind of an orientation for smaller churches to help kind of shepherd them along, because you see like, okay, so they've established this is the way they do it, so we can borrow from some of the things that they do, and try to find our own way in that. And so, yeah, it was, college was amazing, a really, really great experience. The relationships that I built during that time, like amazing. Again, it's the collaboration. It always goes back to relationships. If you're doing things alone, that's not good, Yeah,
it's so hard to do something. And I learned this very quickly as a composition major. You have to be collaborating with people because first off, you have to be making friends.
Yeah.
To get the people to play your pieces. And it shouldn't be like a means to an end at all. But I realized that I was just isolating. I'm an introvert as well, so I isolated myself naturally.
Yeah.
But afterwards, I started making friends. It was a lot easier to get through the classes. It was a lot easier to get through the composition assignments. It was a lot easier to grab somebody and be like, hey, can you play this for me just to make sure that it's playable? And it's because that's a problem that composers have.
Yeah. Yeah. You're speaking another instrument's language. It's like me walking into Thailand and I don't speak Thai at all. Mm-hmm. But like a smile means way more, and we can communicate a lot with a smile and pointing. Yes. But for me to be able to write down and you tell somebody else what I wrote, you're speaking their language. If you were able to write it but not speak it, right? That's what you're essentially doing with composition is you're writing in their language.
And making sure that the grammar's correct.
Exactly. And they'll go, oh, no. Like, I wouldn't make this jump. I wouldn't do a minor third. I would do... That's really difficult to go from here to here.
Yeah, exactly. That was the... I can't do a double stop slide. Turns out you can, but they just weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you unlock special achievements that people didn't know that existed because it's so not classical in a way.
It's not correct.
It's not correct. It's not taught. fiddle playing, right? They'll do all sorts of crazy stuff that aren't taught, but it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of stuff that I was asking other classical musicians to do. They were like, "You're trying to kill me and my violin." Like, no, I saw it. It's possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so important to collaborate with people, especially. So, what was your next steps out of college?
Yeah. So, man, just like everybody, you graduate with some or a lot of debt. And there's trade-offs, right? Like there's trade-offs. There's everything in life is about trade-offs. And so, I graduated. I worked an IT job for 6 months, and I put out probably 50 resumes. And I look at that season as just kind of the waiting and deepening some relationships here and getting my heart prepared. I was looking, the rest of the United States. Like there was no bounds to where I was willing to go for the Lord. I just knew what my calling was literally to lead people to the throne and allow them an opportunity to respond to their Creator. And so I put out 50 resumes all over the country. And there was a church that was willing to take a risk on me at 22, 23. And just before I graduated, I met my wife, Jen. So that would have been that February, November before I graduated, that May. And so from May, we were dating, and from May to October, I was putting out resumes and like frustrated. I was like, Lord, like why is this not any harder? I have a bachelor's degree. Like that should mean like I should be able
something.
Yeah, but I was like, man, but what I learned in that was just like, again, I'm sure you hit senior year of college and you're like, I'm done. Like, I'm so tired. I've had math. Okay. 16 years of school. Is that right? Like from beginning. Yeah. So like, you're like, dude, I'm just like, I'm done with this.
Some people choose to go for a master's. And I'm like, why?
You guys are troopers. My goodness.
Yeah.
So yeah, a church was willing to take a risk on me. And so I moved out to Des Moines. And our time in Des Moines was awesome. Des Moines it was crazy because I grew up in Lancaster, and I've traveled, but I never lived anywhere else except for Chicago for about 4 months. And Des Moines, just a very different culture than Lancaster County.
Sure.
Very far. I mean, it's farmy, but like the Midwest culture mixed in with the farmy, mixed with landlocked state. Like it's
like in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. Right?
Yeah. It's right dead center of the state. And so we were in a church there, and it was a hard. So my wife and I were engaged at that point, and so it was quite a journey. Being in my first ministry job away from Pennsylvania, it was about 22 hours away from where we grew up. So yeah, I mean, it was a hike, and so I didn't go home during that year and a half while we were there. And God, I look back and I just see God like priming for what we're doing now. I just see Him. He's exposing us to different ways of doing things in churches and different size churches. This church was, I believe, between like 15 and 18,000. And so we were at one of the first campuses that they had started. And so it was amazing. First role. And Jen and I, we were, like I said, engaged, and we were able to, after 3 months of me being there, I came back and got Jen, and we moved out to Des Moines together. So that was kind of like our first being married ministry job. It was a blast. And then out of that role, God very clearly, there was a very clear moment that we were like, man, we need to move back closer to Pennsylvania. And so that's why we are in Columbus. We've been in Columbus ever since, Columbus, Ohio, and we absolutely love it. Columbus is a wonderful city.
Columbus is awesome.
It's a young city. It's an up and coming city. Like it's amazing.
Have you ever been to? There's one museum that I will always shout out in Columbus, and it's called Otherworld. Have you ever?
I've never heard of it.
It is. So it markets itself as a interactive museum, and when I heard that, I was like, okay, interactive.
What does that mean?
Right. Does it? But in all seriousness, I can't shout this out enough. It costs $25. You can stay there as long as you want, and it is a whole puzzle that you have to figure out. It's just a whole mystery thing with puzzles all around, and literally you can touch absolutely everything.
That sounds amazing.
And you can. And so we were in a glass room. That was the first room that we had gotten into, me and my friend, when we went. Because we weren't expecting much. We were like, okay, interactive. Sure. And this is the classroom, and this has been after like 9 hours of driving from like Pittsburgh to, that's not 9 hours, but it felt like it, right?
Yes, it does.
9 hours to Columbus, and it's like 4 hours if I'm being realistic,
From
right?
Pittsburgh to Columbus,
Pittsburgh to
it's
Columbus?
about 2.5, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Is it really that short?
But it feels long. I don't know. It always feels long. We
It
came
feels
back.
long,
We
right,
came out
yeah.
to be on this podcast, and it always feels long coming to Lancaster. I don't know why. It feels shorter going to Columbus for me, but it's 2.5.
Anyway, it felt like a long drive, and we were just sat there, and it's like 2 couches, 2 tables. There's a record player on this side, and there's like discs over here, and we were just like chilling, and then slowly my friend gets an idea. Is like, these are discs. I wonder what happens if we put it in to the record player. And I was like, probably nothing, but why not? And because we had seen just like 30 or so people come through and not doing anything, and just walks through and like, oh, look at the mirrors in the infinity room. Oh, that's cool, and then walk away. As soon as we put the disc in there, the whole room changes and it starts bumping music.
Shoot.
like a club, but
yeah.
and it was like a whole light show, and I was like, hey yo, this is sick.
Yeah.
And so we spent like 5 hours there, figured out the entire puzzle, and oh my gosh, was it so much worth it. So you gotta check it out. And it's like in this random hole in the wall shopping center.
Yeah. They better sponsor the episode.
If they would love to sponsor, I would love it, because I mean it's so cool. There's like life-size monsters over there that you can like crawl through the secret passageways. It is so incredible. I highly recommend. It's a wonderful date night for sure, just to go out and check out the puzzles and see what because literally you can touch everything, and you should touch everything.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's my kind of museum.
Yeah, right. It's something that's it's not just purely historical. It's just a bunch of fun.
That's so cool.
So why Columbus, Ohio for you?
Yeah, so I mean, again, Jen's and my story, we're just like, God, we will go where you ask us to go. We will steward what you've given us. And so yeah, we were kind of in the same situation as when I was working IT, and I was like, Jen and I were praying through this, and a church came to us, and we were just like, okay, like it just, when it's the Lord's plan, what I've learned is it just happens. It just, it's piece after piece after piece after piece just falls into place. And so, God, we had about 5 things on a list that we just kind of wrote down, and then gave that over to the Lord. And he gave every single one of those things on our list about what we wanted in that next church. And, man, it was an incredible fit. So we were able to kind of get settled in Columbus. And during that time, Jen had a call on her life into ministry before we had met. God had made it really clear that she was to go in and be a worship pastor someday. And so we were, she was waiting, and she was a pastry chef before. I love to say that.
Oh,
She
really?
would say, I was not pastry chef, but I like to call her pastry chef. She would do like product development. For those of you who are in Lancaster County, Prince Street Cafe, Jen was one of the product developers for all the pastry stuff in the store, and love that job. And so, but
like
while she was, what's that?
Sounds like a lot of fun.
It absolutely, like, I loved eating her stuff.
Right, it's like you had to test it. I guess that's what she would do. She'd make stuff up, experiment with pastries, and like, here, have it.
Yep,
What do you
exactly
think?
right. Yeah, she would share it with everybody in the warehouse. It was awesome. And so yeah, she was like, God, I'm doing this. Like, yeah, I'm in pastry. Like, how am I going to go into ministry? Those are 2 seemingly very different things, right? Like, and so only by God's grace, while we were at the church in Columbus, he really brought forth our calling. Like, he refined my calling and what that looks like, and he brought forth like fulfilling God's calling on her life that 4 years prior she had heard very clearly. And so it was just a really beautiful, like, God had brought us together, and then continued our individual stories. That when you're single, when you're single and you're dating, right, you have your own stories, and you're coming together, and it's never like you're just going to do a left turn, a hard left turn, and you're going a different direction now. Yeah, God continues that story, but brings 2 people together in such a beautiful way. And so, yeah, I'm stepping into I was saying this, I was stepping into my calling as a worship pastor. And so I was an associate worship leader at this church, part of our central team. And Jen was a high capacity volunteer, serving between 15 and 24 hours, because she knew that was what God had. And so we were just taking that risk and saying like, Lord, whatever you have, living off of my salary is very tight. And God just brings forth this, like deepens her calling. And it's super beautiful. Yeah.
So when did you guys decide to create your own business?
So yeah, that's the most, I think we're kind of hitting the culmination of a lot of loose ends in our life, if that makes sense. So one of those loose ends for me is my dad for most of my life, had his own business growing up. And I knew I was being called into ministry, but I was like, what does that look like? And so then I figured it out. It's probably going to be I'm a worship pastor till I die at a local church, right? Like, and it's amazing. That's an amazing gift, amazing calling. Yeah. But then as we walk through this, I have a love of music, and my dad's in business. I'm moving into ministry. I have a heart for creatives. Jen and I, like our love for creatives, whether it's visual arts, marketing, they're all telling a story. Every single component, every musician, every worship leader, every artist is telling a story. And so our heart starts getting bigger. So that's another thing. We're just like, man, we just love connecting with artists and creating a home for them. Oftentimes what makes an artist, two things I'm convinced of. I'm still trying to discern this, but the first is, you are very specific in the taste that you like, which is why there's always like a lot of like, no, pop music, or no, I love jazz, or like, oh no, it's classical, right? Because you're very tuned to your tastes. So that makes you an artist. And then your second is you often feel like you don't really fit in a camp. You feel like you're in a different category. You're like, maybe you bridge categories or you break categories. And so crossover artists now are huge, right? So those two things, I think, really, especially the taste, make an artist. And people that really lean into those and they learn the tastes, and they instead of saying that my tastes are bad, they press into those tastes. It really helps make them. So and then for us personally, as we've moved into starting Freedom City, we had filled in at a bunch of different churches, worship leading, fill-in musicians, things like that. And being at our church in Columbus, there was a lot of needs for that across campus. And when we were on staff, we needed a break or sabbatical, things like that. And we would look around and we're like, who can we call on? Everybody's got a job, they want stability in their life, but like, where are the Paul apostles, right? Where are the ones that are going from church to church and building up the ministry, taking care of the ministry for a minute? We need that in the church. I'm sure for anybody that attends church on your podcast, like they've seen an interim pastor at one point or another, that their lead pastor moves on and somebody comes in and they take care of the pulpit, and then they bring a leadership team around the whole church to make sure that the finance and administration, all of that stuff is taken care of and a search committee is formed to find the next lead pastor. And so we were like, but who's doing that in the worship space? Who's taking care of the worship team? Because I've seen so many times, and this is an area where we're like, man, we need to step in and take care of these teams. Like Bob, who's a plumber, or Joe, who's an IT director, he's got a family, he's got a full-time job, and you're asking him to lead a worship team on top of that. And that full-time worship leader was also he was full-time,
right,
and also taking care of production. And most worship ministries, there's not a hyper focus on production and worship and learning how to work together. And so you're asking Bob to step into a position that these two teams don't know how to work together, don't know how to communicate together, because they were tied together by a person and a relationship with one person.
Right.
And there's not what if that guy, Jen and I always said to our teams, what if we fell out of the sky in an airplane and we died? Right? Who's going to take over? And so we always structured our teams that we became irrelevant. And that should be the goal. Ephesians 4 says equipping the saints for ministry. And so as we're building our teams, we always ask the question, if we do X, could our teams, number one, take over that? And number two, if in our stead, could they maintain that same process? Or is that only there because I'm here? And so we started Freedom City because we looked around and said, churches, there's only, I believe the stat is like 10% of churches, and it could even be less, but 10% of churches multiply, meaning they expand, they add a campus, they equip leaders that eventually come on staff at churches. Very few churches, they don't want change, and so they don't search for bringing new people into being a pastor or a church leader in some way, shape, or form. And so we're like, man, we need to help church leaders understand that and help them move into that space. And so that's the ministerial side to the artist calling that Jen and I both have, that musical calling. And so those two things come together in such a beautiful way by here is that I've seen several of my friends that they're like, man, I believe, and I believe too, I believe that they are called to go into music. But the reality is two things. The church very often undervalues artists, and that's a fact. And I could, whether that's pay or not the thank yous or all that. So you're diminished to, if this is a call in your life, it feels like a diminishment, if that's a word, diminishment. It feels like you're diminished to a place that, I just volunteer, but I feel like God is calling me into this. And my question is, if you're discerning that, what's stopping you from taking those steps? And so personal obedience for us is a huge, huge deal, that if God has instilled that inside of you, then what are the steps or what are the things that you can do now to move you into doing that full-time or providing for your family in that way? So as we've been asking those questions, it's like, how do we marry the ministry of the local church and not, number one, lose the 20s and 30 somethings because they're going out the back door faster than you can say, right. Oh no, our back door's open. Like they're so fast moving out. And so we're like, how do we, and then the second place that we're losing them to are like what I was saying earlier, like Nashville, Austin, Texas, LA. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes you get caught up in the bad communities. You get caught up in doing things that you're like, man, I'm so far from the Lord. You have shame, you have guilt. You're like, I don't even belong in church anymore because of the decisions that I've made. I hate myself. I hate who I've become. People probably wouldn't use that language, but it's there for them. And so they just continue to do the same thing over and over. And they're like, how can I have a place of belonging? And so Jen and I are sitting here and saying, I think that the church, there's a gift that exists within the artist community that says we want to work together. So it comes together with that collaboration piece. It comes together with a lot of artists saying, I have this drive and need, or for the Christian artist, they say, I feel like God has instilled this desire in me, but I don't know how to provide for my family or provide for myself. And then the church needs to be encouraged to say, maybe it's not that your artists are supposed to be at your church only. There are definitely artists, creatives, people that serve on your worship team and production team that are supposed to be at your church. But maybe they're supposed to be traveling from one church to the next, building up the ministry. And those become the blood, right? The blood carries oxygen from the heart to the head, from the lungs, right? The lungs, like, I didn't study biology very much, but they're the blood. And so like, why is the body of Christ not allowing people who, have awesome character, right? That needs to be filtered through. If you have terrible character,
right, you gotta work on that.
You've gotta go through, and life can either do two things. You could either develop good character or bad character. Like there's really no options. And so if you've got good character, you have this call on your life, and you are so easy to work with. Within Freedom City, those are character, competency, and chemistry. When we look for team members within Freedom City, we're filtering through what our value system are and based on those 3 C's. And so those types of people, they're rooted at a church, but they move from church to church, building up the ministry, filling in holes, potentially coming in if a church is like, we're looking to do a complete sound overhaul, a new AVL system. Well, we've got worship leaders and production operators and AVL installers all within Freedom City. And you could even work with our marketing team and ask them, well, what kind of LED walls or what kind of projectors do you like? Like ask their preferences because a lot of them have worked on staff and they've had gear that, an AVL company suggests, but you talk to the person who's developing graphics and they're like, yeah, that just, it doesn't deliver what I need it to deliver. And so having a place for all of those people to come and collaborate, I think is super important. So yeah, I know that was a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's this huge piece of allowing churches to work together through the artists, and allowing artists to minister, those who God has called. It's not every artist. Not every artist is called to be doing what we're doing.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
So is it a, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like this is where a place where it sounds like a lot of freelance work.
Yeah.
Through your corporation, nonprofit?
We call it an organization. We're technically like a for-profit.
Okay.
Yeah. It's freelancers. Is technically, if you want to get down to like the bare bones business side.
Just so people understand what it basically is.
Yeah.
It's a place where freelancers can go and you guys will outsource them to different churches.
Yes.
Sounds like.
Yep. Yeah. So we end up kind of being like the sending organization.
Yeah.
And we handle, if a church is coming to us and they're like, hey, we are looking for a film worship leader for August 22nd. They will contact Jen, and Jen will go through our discovery call and make sure that what they're looking for is exactly what they're looking for. Because here's a situation. A church came to us and they're like, we're looking for a worship leader. And they're in an interim time right now where they're looking for their next worship pastor to come in. And they came to us and they were like, man, like we're looking for a worship leader. And I was like, Jen went through the discovery call and she said, she came back to me and said, I actually think that they need a band director because they have vocalists. They have people that can step into worship leading, but they need somebody that can run rehearsal. They can pick keys of songs. They could do tracks. So they need a band director in that scenario, and it saves them money. And it allows our team to be utilized. And some of our team members, they're worship leaders at their church, but they're like, I'm not as marketable to be a worship leader out with Freedom City, but I'm a band director and I know rehearsal begins here, it ends here. I know how to do all the sets. I can do the tracks. I can do the pro presenter. They can do all of the stuff that is involved in being a worship pastor. But that some of them will be like, yeah, my voice is just not up to par.
Right.
And so they love it. They love being able to come in and build relationships and do that kind of stuff. So we just make sure during that discovery call that what they're asking for is exactly, and our job is to help build up. So it could teach the leadership, like, actually, we don't need a worship pastor. We've got 25 singers and we need somebody to hire in that's a band director.
Right.
And that utilizes a whole nother aspect of the body of Christ. And it's unique to that church.
And it's delegation. It's more decentralized.
Yeah.
Which is, in my opinion, way better than a centralized system.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I think the church, a lot of the church is built on trends, and I hate that.
It's so bad.
It is. Heartbeat cymbals are great, but there's other really great cymbal brands. Like that's been like the biggest thing lately. I'm like, everybody in Nashville's using Heartbeat. They're great cymbals, but like Meinl's great too.
Oh, cymbals. Like I got you.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
oh.
on drum kits. Yeah. So like Heartbeat is like a custom cymbal brand, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, but there's other great cymbal packs. So yeah, it's everybody's like, we got to get Heartbeat because Heartbeat's the thing, right? But no. It's like, find what works for your community
and what works best for you, because culture shouldn't impact Christ. It should be Christ impacts culture, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the church has done so much of that, and especially when it comes to music. It used to be that Christians were the setter for music.
Yeah.
And now we're just the copiers of pop culture.
Yeah.
And I heard it explained to me this way the other day, which I thought was like, whoa. But Christian today can be considered indie rock. And I was like, you know what? You're right. It's just the lyrics that make it like Christian.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so why?
That's really good. I think the trending points, trends are great.
Oh yes, they exist for a reason.
They do. But I think finding what does obedience mean for your community.
Mm.
And this is for bands, right? Like if you're a Christian band and you're like, man, we want to become the thing,
Right.
in Lancaster or in Philly or Harrisburg, right? Like we want to become the thing. What does obedience unto the Lord mean for you? And I know that sounds really churchy and like, but the reality is like, how is the Lord going to add more to your group without the obedience piece? And so grappling with that, it causes you, rather than going corporate first, corporate, I mean, is bringing it to the band and saying, I think that we should be a Christian band and, you know, and we're going to, you know, I was in metal band. So we were all like, oh, we're going to be missionaries to the metal community in Lancaster County. And we want to be just like August Burns Red, right? Like that was like our target, like, but we didn't understand the story that God was writing in our life. We didn't grapple with that first. And so you have to go private before you go corporate. You go private before you become a missionary, musicianary is what we call our teams within Freedom City. Like all of our musicians, you guys are musicianaries. Like, and so you've got to go private first to figure out like, what has God called me to? What does he equip me with? What is my personality like in shepherding, and what are my particular gifts? Some people are evangelistic, but some people are more, they're shepherding, they're pastoral. So they'll walk in the low points and the high points. They'll be right alongside you. And those are two very different giftings, and they're both to be celebrated.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I always view music for me is not just music. There's a greater purpose. And I think you said that earlier. There's such a greater purpose in what we do. And like you were saying, like culture used to be shifted by the music that was created.
Mm-hmm.
And
it still is.
It is.
Yeah.
But for the church, it's become tradition. And that's not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing.
For certain communities, it's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
It means a lot to them. But tradition for tradition's sake, I think you miss a lot of beauty. Yeah.
Tradition for tradition's sake loses the tradition it was meant to be for.
Yes. So
right?
good.
So because after a while of doing tradition, it becomes, because tradition works to an extent until times change. And then you need a new tradition.
Yes.
To build upon and expand, because tradition only. You know why? You know Oxford University?
I do. Yeah.
The motto is tradition.
Is it?
Do you know why?
Why is that?
It's because they've been around since they were founded in 1000 AD.
Shoot.
So they're older than like the Aztec civilization.
Are you serious? That's crazy.
And their motto is tradition. I'm like, guys.
Yeah.
After a while, you gotta move on. Tradition is good when it comes down to like brass tacks and like doctrine and like God and like strictly gospel. Yes, the Bible is that's
yes,
right.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to like tertiary, secondary, or well not this, but like tertiary and like music stuff, like what do we play, or how does the sermon interplay with the worship, or like stuff that doesn't really matter as much. You gotta bend a little bit, and because what was popular in the 80s or what worked in the 80s, imagine trying to bring a floppy disk.
Yeah, so good.
It's not gonna work.
Yeah, they're just vehicles.
Right.
They're vehicles for the greater purpose.
Right.
And
sometimes you gotta make a new vehicle.
Yeah. Every year we get new vehicles, right?
Exactly. I mean,
or like, new iPhones.
I want to say iPhones. Yeah. Every single year, everyone lines up for the new iPhone, right. Not because of tradition, but because it's new and and it works and it's better. And there's other stuff that we're gonna leave out of that conversation. But but in regards to church and music, or even just the way we do things in church, you have to abandon some sort of tradition in order for it to be feasible, in order for it to be worthwhile to your congregation. You shouldn't do tradition because whatever you do, it's for your congregation. You are the shepherd. And tradition doesn't work for everybody. Yeah, so it's people move, people change, people themselves, they change over time. You have to go with that and nurture what you have now, what you had back then.
Yeah, and I think too, like, tradition connects you with the past. Like it helps you feel larger than yourself, and you're part of this thing that's, you know, from the beginning of time, God, even in the Old Testament, was on his way to building his church, his bride, right? And And so it connects you with that. I think that there are different other types of people. Like for me, Jen and I really emphasize a lot on community. And so like for us, that value exceeds tradition.
Right.
For some people, the tradition value exceeds the community aspect because you feel like you're connected and things are correct and they're pointed. And I think that it's not, for us, it's our challenge is not to value like love. When I say love, I mean making that an idol, making community the like the top, like that's the most important piece. The challenge for us is to say like we need to understand where the church has been, the values and doctrine, and to bring people that need and that are whether it's ostracized, they feel like they're disconnected, they don't have a place of belonging, people that deal with depression, anxiety, like bringing those people in and saying like, just come and belong.
Mm-hmm.
And our heart specifically in that is just to see artists come and belong. And so I think that there's just different values that churches build on. And we're all built on, I pray that we're all built on the same foundation. Gospel. Yeah, the same foundation. But the way that the church plays out is just a little bit different, I think, in every community. But you have to understand the purpose and the story, the obedience. I keep going back to obedience because it's personal. And every leadership has to discern, what does obedience look like? And when you go to trends, when you follow a trend or you go to a conference, is that obedience for your church? Or are you just like looking for the next
big thing?
The next big thing that you can apply to your church and be like, oh, we can do X and it's going to grow our church to 500X. Like, no, that's typically not what happens.
No.
And life change is slow. It takes time, building community. Patience, yeah, like all of that. And it's the same thing with music. Like it just takes time and effort and energy. So yeah, I mean, those are just things that we spend a lot. That's what keeps us up at night. And then the other side is like, how do we get artists, especially like I said earlier, 20s and 30 somethings? The church is shrinking and there's a lot of reasons for that. And it's dependent on region. It's dependent on church. It's dependent on the city that you're in, why churches are becoming the secondary thing. People don't keep attending. And I think that's where the rise of a collective like Freedom City, when there's somebody within our team that really is wrestling with a relationship with Jesus, there are lots of doubts, there's lots of questions. You bring those to our team. And some of us are further down the journey, but we borrow one another's faith. And our hope is that we've got artists, whether it's videographers, graphic designers, social media marketers, songwriters, producers, composers, arrangers, musicians that go and do fill-in, musicians that travel with artists. Like, they're people that we all have doubts, we all have questions, we all have these things that we wrestle with. We all have a story that has significant trauma in it that hurt us. And so just bring those things. There's no shame in that. And just like Jesus identified his 12, all of them had stories and hurts and all of that. And so he said, just come and do ministry with me. Learn from me.
Come as you are.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's beautiful.
You talk about the shrinking of the church, and I just want to mention something that blew my mind a while ago. I started watching The Simpsons. And because I was like, everyone says The Simpsons are like the best TV show, at least season 1 through 9 are like the best thing. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll watch a little bit of it. And so I started watching it, and I was like, so that was made back in the 80s or something, right?
Wow, okay.
And back then, they had Homer Simpson and the whole family around praying before a meal.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Wow.
And I was like, that was back, worship wars were like happening, but to have that happen in like the prime time American TV show, even like I started watching like the first few seasons of Family Guy, even they went to church. And I was like, what?
Yeah. Man.
And that there's not a TV show, a main popular TV show now that would do that seriously and not play it off as a joke.
Yeah. Wow.
Right? Isn't that crazy?
That's so crazy. That's a whole nother conversation.
It's a whole other conversation, but it just goes to show you how much the church in America, at least, has shrunken or become secondary, like you
Yeah.
said. And to the point where it's the butt of the joke. It's not the purpose of conveying something.
Yeah, and I want to also clarify too. The church is God's chosen vehicle.
Yeah.
But like the community, right? That's what makes up the church.
Right.
It's not the Episcopalian or the Baptist
No.
or the and so I think that's really a differential. It's not the organization or the building. It's the people that are involved that the Holy Spirit are speaking to and growing and changing, and there's the fruit of the Holy Spirit that like it's all or nothing. You can't be self-controlled but not love.
Right.
Right? And so all of those things as an artist, like you're walking into a very, very highly contested area, both in the church and out, because it's all opinion based.
Yeah.
It is all opinions. And the most handling that opinions with kid gloves and being respectful,
It's hard.
it's very difficult, but like imagine artists going forward, bands, artists, musicians that go forward and say, I love you, despite our arguments that we've had or our viewpoints or a worldview that's different.
Yeah.
And we do all have common things that we agree in.
We have our foundations. It's the secondary and tertiary issues that we
Yes.
disagree with.
Yep. And so let's press into those and let's do ministry out of that foundation.
Foundation, yeah. Yeah, when we mention the church, we're not talking about any one specific church. We are talking about the community, because the church, the capital C church, is all Christians, not just the Methodists, not just the Protestants, which encapsulates most of everything, and not just the Catholics either. Yeah. It incorporates everyone, because we are the church. Yeah, and that can be said of any Christian alive.
And it is possible,
or dead.
It is possible to have, let's pick on the Baptists, right? Because that was we love those Baptists, right? I was a pastor in the Southern Baptist Convention, but the picking on the Baptists, like oftentimes they're like, yes, our theology and the way that we do things is correct, but it is possible to have a dead church that is not preaching the gospel in the Southern Baptist Convention. Yeah, it is absolutely possible. Just like you could have a one denomination looks at another denomination and they say, well, man, they've really gone down the away from the Lord. They are traveling 100 miles the opposite direction. But it is possible to have churches in that denomination still that believe in the inerrancy of Scripture. They follow what the gospel teaches unswervingly. Like it is possible, and they do exist. But everything you need to be cautious in, you need to discern, and you need to be wise in.
You shouldn't be one to throw away a church just because of the denomination they're affiliated with. Yeah, there can be truth and heresy taught in the same building.
Exactly, that's so good. That feels like a bumper sticker. That feels like a bumper sticker.
And sometimes they can be the same person.
Well. Exactly. I mean, we are fallen too. Like everything we say, it doesn't mean that it's 100% correct. So everything we're talking about here is like the foundation of Freedom City. Like we love that our teams are so fired up. We've served 4 states so far, and our dream is that we go national. That because there's so many needs, and one of the things we talked about is like maybe we plant in Lancaster County, because Ohio clearly has needs. Yes. And we're seeing the byproduct of that as churches start coming together and they work together in a beautiful way. And the network is because of our artists, because of our creatives. Wonderful. It's amazing. And they're on the front end of meeting with the church leaders and meeting the worship teams and developing those relationships. And then when we have, organized worship events across the city, the artists are there. They'll see people at these churches that they've served at. Yeah. And it's just it's an amazing experience that the ministry is being done by our team members. It's not titled pastors at churches. Mm-hmm. It's our team members going out and saying, I am called to doing this.
And that's crazy, because you would think, because the goal of the church is unity, right? We are the church. And it's all these little small things that divide us. And people can get, I can't tell you how many arguments we've had with like Presbyterians or Baptists on which day is the Sabbath or predestination or not. This is half of your experience at Bible college, by the way.
Yes. Yep.
half the times your overnights are arguing about these things instead of homework. At least that was my experience. But
Mine too.
there you go. But to have it's so funny how music in out the outside world is what combines people, and in the church it's what combines people again. It separates the differences and brings people together, because churches need to realize that it's not about them.
Mm-hmm.
It's about Christ and Christians and the community. It's not about your numbers. It's not about the First St. John's United Methodist Church on whatever street. It's not about the First Baptist whatever. It's about God, and it's about Christ, and it's about bringing people closer to Him. Yeah. And the silly, well, granted on what the terms are, the silly divisions that we make that divide us shouldn't. I mean, you're letting your ego get in the way of God.
Yeah. I think, and I'm still working through a lot of this, man. I'm in process, just like everybody else.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. Like for me, I've had to put some significant, what I thought were grounds that I would fight over. I've had to put those aside. And there are things, again, we come back to personal obedience. So there's certain people on our team that'll be like, I don't feel comfortable serving these types of churches.
Right.
And we're like, just tell us no. Like we care more about you being in the center of God's will than our, making a profit or anything like that.
And
like
it comes down to not letting another man stumble over.
Yes.
Right.
So good. It comes exactly back to that. And like the other cool thing about it is, if this person, let's say, if there's somebody in the Baptist church, we'll pick on the Baptists again. They're like, I serve at a Baptist church, but there's a Methodist church that's asking to bring me in. And they're like, do you know much about the church or anything like that? Well, we'll do research on our end so we can speak a little bit to what they are. But if they're like, can you tell me about the Methodist theology? Yes, I can tell you a little bit about Methodist theology, but why don't you go study that really quick and get back to us in a couple hours? Just go read through it, because now you're
check out their church too.
Yeah, and check out the church. Now they're growing. They don't need to pay $80,000 like I did for Bible college. They now get to go spend time studying and like, what does the Methodist teach? Who was Wesley?
Who was the Wesleys?
Yeah. It develops them. It allows them to understand, why do we have so many denominations? What are the little
perks and pros and cons about each? Because there are so many pros and cons when it comes to Methodists. The biggest pro, in my opinion, I grew up Methodist.
Perfect.
is the music culture. I don't know if you know Wesley at all. Well, I assume you do. You went to this college, but he was a stickler on music.
Yes.
And he, in the hymns there, he says, sing with all your heart or don't sing at all.
Wow.
And isn't that what we should do?
Yeah. We're commanded to sing.
We're commanded to sing. And with our full hearts and full, what is the line that Jesus in full body, mind, spirit
and truth.
Worship the Lord with all your heart, with all your spirit, with all your mind, and there's something else that I'm forgetting. But it's that you got to do it.
Yeah.
And so sing with the full force or not at all.
That's good. I think some other denominations need to hear that.
They never have heard that. And there's so many Christians that will go to Sunday and just or not even just sing and just stand.
Because it's not my preference on music.
Exactly. Just because it's not my preference. And I'm like, it's worshiping the Lord. It doesn't care about your preference. You're gonna sing Hosanna, 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 even if I don't like repetitions.
So good.
All the time in heaven.
So good.
So you gotta have to get used to it here now.
Yeah.
To sing stuff that you don't maybe not like to hear. If it's heretical, then don't sing it. Yeah.
Yes.
There's always that caveat. But if it's sound ground sound theology, sing it.
Yes.
With all your heart, all your spirit, all your mind, because it's gonna grow you in ways. Because when I sing stuff that I don't like, it grows on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say how many hymns I don't like hymns, even though they're like some of the most theologically packed stuff. But whenever I hear "A Mighty Fortress Is My God," I'm there full force because it's there and it's great, and it's the theology there is so packed.
Yeah. I'm there with you. I didn't grow up with a lot of hymns, and so there's still, we'll go into a traditional church somewhere a lot of what we do is within Ohio, but traveling around the Midwest, and so I have to learn a lot of hymns. Like I have to, because I didn't grow up with a lot of them, and I think that for me, I struggle from a lyrical writer. So this gets into the artist realm, right? Now it's still preferences. So anybody that's listening to this, if you love hymns, like
go for it.
Go for it. Like, I am not telling you you're wrong, but for me, my preference sits in, I love songs that are very focused on one topic. And I struggle with hymns that are like 4, 5, 6 different topics. And they cover, it's like buckshot. It's like, why don't we cover every single thing that we could possibly cover in a song? And I would prefer to, worship is a walk. Yes. You start from one location and you begin at another. Sure. I look at Adam and Eve in the garden, and I'm sure God was like, hey, this is all of yours. And let's just journey together. Let's just walk from this location to this location. I'm sure there was a lot to look at, a lot to sample, a lot of beautiful animals that you could interact with. And they weren't scared probably of us.
Right. And we weren't scared of them.
Exactly.
Either.
Like,
imagine going up to the spider and petting it.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
I kill him. So, but yeah, like that kind of piece, writing pieces that are very focused lyrically allow you to have that beginning and end topic. They allow you to take that journey from one location to another. And so you can start from like this, the song I keep going back to. No, it's all good.
Just imagining Eve walking
in the Garden of Eden.
In the Garden of Eden.
That seems so out of character. Like in what I picture the Garden of Eden, it doesn't seem like it fits.
No, it doesn't.
Nope. That's awesome.
That's why it's the Garden of Eden, not now.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Because the Garden of Eden wasn't supposed to have spiders in it, so she would have Adam kill him, right? She could choose what was in there and what not.
Right, of course.
I've learned that in marriage anyway. Like my wife, it's like happy wife, happy life. That is very true.
Oh,
I never knew how true it was, but it is. But I love my wife and I want her to have whatever she wants. But anyway, so I was saying like I starting a worship set with kind of a gathering type song. Like I go back to a very focused song would be like Open Up the Heavens by Vertical Worship. So open up the heavens. We want to see you open up the floodgates, a mighty river like gotcha, that. Yeah. Like, God, we just want you to bring your presence here with us. Mm-hmm. And it's not that he's bringing his presence. He's making us aware of what he's doing in that room at the time. It's just a poetic way of saying like, open our eyes to what you're already doing, open our hearts to what you want to speak to us and change us in. And so like starting there, but then you end on like intimacy. You end on like another option is you could end on like a throne room, like holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, like that kind of song. And so starting from there, and there's a lot of topics in between that. You could talk a testimony. You could say, this is what God has done. This is what I have done. This is who I am. This is who he is. Like all of those things could be done in that middle portion of that set. So you've just created a beautiful journey of a very focused, and there's worship songs that are not focused either. Don't hear as all modern worship is not focused, like, or they're all incredibly focused and very specific. Like there's songs like You Make Me Brave by Bethel. Like that is not a focused song. It was written on a vision. And so it's awesome. It came out from some place, but I personally would not do that in a worship set. And it's not a very focused song. So I look for the ones that are very specific. They tend to be more poetic. Again, it's preference. Yeah. And I don't fit in every single church culture.
No.
And there's other people, like one of my friends loves hymns and loves very like meaty, like crazy big words in worship music. And I'm like, I'd rather not say things like sanctification in a song. Like, you know what I mean? I'd rather say, like, I want to be more like Jesus or make me more like Jesus. To
more
me,
simplified.
It's common language. I'm looking for common tongue. Paul was writing in Koine Greek. Yeah, not Christianese. Like, an unbeliever has no frame of reference for that.
Exactly.
And so, and again, like doing art, it's with people that don't have, like for me, my frame of reference is people that don't have a relationship with Jesus. I want to write for them that they listen to one of the songs and it moves them. Yeah. And it's just, us having a conversation or me having a conversation with the Lord that they're sitting in on. Like I want them to hear my worldview or my perspective by just me having a conversation rather than using traditional language. We
Right.
can bring that back to tradition. Like, so yeah, it's awesome.
And it all dependent on also what the congregation needs.
Yeah.
Because some people might need those 6 points they hear in the hymn.
Yep.
Other people do not.
Yep. Yep.
So we have some of your music here.
Yes.
You want to talk about that? We have Chaos lined up.
Yeah. So Chaos was written it was written 2 years prior. Jen and I have been very slow to be putting out music. And you know, for those who are songwriters that listen to this podcast, it's really hard to put out music.
It is.
Especially when you start and doing pieces, writing compositions. Like some of it is so close to your heart.
And you wrote this in 2020, right?
We wrote this 2 years prior, so 2018-ish.
Oh, 2018.
We kind of we wrote it, but we were dragging our heels. The Lord has asked us, the 2 pieces of our calling are to lead worship and to be continually songwriting. And we were so slow to do that. And what I've learned in that is delayed obedience is still disobedience.
Procrastination is disobedience. I heard it this way. Procrastination is the assumption that God will make time later.
Oh my goodness. That also feels really weighty.
It is. It's the prideful assumption that God will make time later. I don't have to do it now.
Nope. I think that God's call will move on. I think God, every situation is not like a Jonah, where you push off what God is asking you to do.
And he just forces you.
Yeah, he just pushes you. He won't do that. We have free will. I think in that scenario, God chose Jonah specifically for that story and for that situation. But God will move on from a call, and you will miss that.
Moses.
Yes,
he
exactly.
Did that with Moses in the 40 years wandering. He had to wait for the next generation. And who was it? Joshua. They came after Moses.
Yes,
let him in.
I think it was Joshua.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So so for us, we drug our heels. So COVID happened in 2020.
It did.
I don't think I needed to say that. But COVID happened, and we were looking around, and Jen and I, we specifically have lived our lives. We left 1.5 incomes in the local church to start Freedom City, and we were looking around and just like, we don't want to live our life in fear, and we shouldn't. We have the hope above hopes. Like, we will be in heaven. There's no question about that. And so for us to press into like our job is to be leading and to be providing care for those who need to be cared for. That was our call. Our personal call was like, we don't want to be holed up. We want to be out. And I was like, man, we need to release this song now. So still, COVID happened in March, and we still released it. I think it was like in November. But the reality is, like, we wrote this song in the midst, for us personally, 2 years prior, it was just in this like doubting and questioning and really hard season. Just saying like, I just feel like my life is a mess. And we applied it to COVID and saying the world is a mess. Everything is crazy. But and the verse 1 is like, remind this heart of your intent. I will not fear because you are true. Like those pieces, like, God, I know that who you are will dictate and provide faith and will cover that. And just allowing his truth of the word of his word, the community that we're in, the truth that our community speaks over us, let that hit your soul. Let that provide peace and over your life. And I think that the chorus is, let your stillness wash over me, and the chaos be my peace, O King of my heart, O King of my heart. And that just kind of characterizes like the word of the Lord is true. It is steadfast. It is beautiful, and it does apply. You do have to dig, and you have to dig down into it. But that will dictate. That'll dictate your hope or your fear. So.
And with that said, this is Chaos by Caleb and Jen Wilber.
Remind this heart of your intent, and will not fear
And that was Chaos by Caleb and Jen Wilber. So if there's any Christian artists around here, or where can they get connected to you guys, Freedom City Collective?
Yeah. So if you are looking to get connected with Freedom City Collective, you can go to our website at freedomcitycollective.com. If you're a musician in this area, we'd love to know you. You could go onto the website at the very top. There's a Join Our Team button. You can click on that and fill out the form, and we'll set up kind of an hour call to get to know your story and who you are. And that, if you're a musician, a worship leader, a graphic designer, videographer, social media marketer, we want to know you. So that's where you can get to know Freedom City, and we'll sit down and have a conversation. And if you're wanting to know more about our music, you can go to Caleb and Jen on Instagram, and we're on Spotify. We're on everywhere. So you can go on Spotify, just put in Caleb and Jen.
Yeah, so now, kind of rounding out this time, we have some general questions that I like to ask. So what are some, maybe the biggest mistakes that you've made or you've seen other worship artists make, and how can we prevent those from happening again?
That's really good questions. So for musicians, I think for guitar players especially, be listening. Listen to who you're playing with. You don't need to show off. In fact, I think knock it off. I'm usually I was one that overplayed all the time. And you say a whole lot more by what you don't play, by what you do play. And so choose what you play and where you play strategically. And the other layer of that is think like a producer, think holistically.
Yeah.
Think like an arranger, think holistically, listen to a bunch of music with different styles of instruments in it. Become a master at your craft, but become a student of others. And so I think that those two pieces will end up setting you up in a band situation that you're going to win. And you're gonna help add value to other people that you play with, which is the goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've heard this quote in regards to jazz, but I think it encompasses so much more. Jazz is about the notes you don't play more so than the notes you play.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I've heard the same.
Yeah.
I probably borrowed it from that.
So what is worship to you? There are a lot of definitions of worship, but what do you consider worship for you?
Man, I'm gonna say the answer that everybody gives. It's a lifestyle, but I think the picture that I see is a walk. And Dan Hollingsworth used to be a professor at LBC, and we took our very first worship and arts class. I'm sure you took it too, where they're like, "How would you define worship?"
Yes, that's exactly.
Yeah, perfect. I love it. And when I first got in, I was like, I don't know. I didn't know how to define it. But by the end of the semester, he told us his definition. He called it a walk, and I borrowed it. So it's a journey. And I think that's, we were talking about tradition earlier, and we were talking about, newness can be as detrimental as tradition can be.
Yes.
And so finding that beautiful in between, allow the pioneers of your church to pioneer, but also allow those who tend to be a little bit more with the status quo, allow them to help guard and shape what that pioneering looks like. And so allow that walk. To me, that's worship. You're allowing people who have been created in the image of God to be serving, and their response, hopefully, is to go back to their Creator, to shed everything back to their Creator, and to create moments. We're moment makers as lead worshipers, and so it's moment after moment after moment. And I believe that God just sees. We see Sunday morning, we go to sleep, we have another 6 days, and then it's Sunday morning again. I think what God sees is one continuous worship service, because he's outside of time.
Right.
And we see all the division in it, but he doesn't. And so it's worship, it's Sunday morning spending time, or Monday through Friday spending time with Jesus. All of those moments, it's allowing him, inviting him, and having moments with him. And when you're serving alongside people that have these other gifts, the pioneering gift, a nurturer gift that's very focused on people and values, guardians who ask a lot of questions and they're very hesitant to change, those types of people, allow them space to vocalize those things, to braise up those questions. And I think you will end up having a holistic picture of what the corporate worship looks like but you cannot have corporate worship without having a private life, private time spending worshiping. You cannot. I love the quote of like, you can't go where you've never gone yourself. You can't be a tour guide without having experienced it first. And so it is so true. And I think that as I get older, I'm learning more and more to slow down. I'm a pioneering type, so I'm a go, go, go kind of person. Yeah. And I'm learning more and more to slow down and to spend time with my Creator. And that ends up fueling, and somehow God always gives back more time. Where I feel like I'm losing time because I'm doing something obligatory. Right. He just says, I'm going to make more time and you're going to get everything you need done. And I just want you to know me. I just want you to be filled up by me and to not lose sight. Nothing's equal with the gospel. No movement in this world, no organization is equal to the gospel and to Jesus. If you put them on the same the same plane, you're highly mistaken. Yeah. It's not true.
No. So, last question. How have you found your faith challenged throughout your career?
This is a whole nother conversation, probably for a different podcast. I have dealt with some significant church hurt. And like I said, you're like, whoa, okay, now we can press into that. But God allows painful moments in our lives, I think, to really deepen our character and who He is. And so when those painful moments come, I've had to tell myself, rather than being in the deepest part or depression or anxiety or whatever that looks like, pressing in to the truth that God is going to use that for His good and for His glory. Chaos, we just listened to that, and I feel like there's some elements of that we're just like, man, things are unraveling and I have no control, and when's the next shoe gonna drop? But He's going like, look to me, like these things are small. Right. And it's not outside of my control. And so I think that's to me is getting above my circumstances and getting above the pain or the trauma and saying, there's a purpose in this. And all I have to do, this is literally all you have to do, is wait and be patient and to spend time with Him. And that could be reading, that could be out on a mountaintop, just looking out in creation. But tell Him, when you have the strength, tell Him what's bothering. He already knows.
Right, yeah.
But tell Him what those things that you wrestle with are. And He's going to, I think He's going to, over time, show you what the purpose of that is. And if you allow your heart to stay, there's two things that can happen. You can either be a rock solid heart and not change and get frustrated and angry, or you can force your heart by talking about it and journaling and doing healthy things to become softer. Yeah. And that can come out in your art.
And there's the funniest story I think from the Bible is I think it's Elisha. It's either Elisha or Elijah. I can't keep those two. But he was really mad, and the Lord told him go to sleep and have some food, and he was fine afterwards. And I'm like, isn't that so true? When we get just take a moment, rest, get some nourishment. How you doing now?
So just like God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, we are triune beings. We're body, soul, and spirit.
Yes.
And so if circumstances in life, if things like I really struggle calming down and not working, like getting to a place where I rest, oftentimes a nap or a run just completely shifts. Yeah, it does. And so those are what I would put underneath self-care routines. Yeah. And finding that as an artist, you're highly neurotic. You're a neurotic individual, meaning you can be thrown off, something can get you out of your juju, something bad will happen, and you could be sent that. I mean, melancholy is like another adjective for artists. And so finding those things that you don't become the Beethoven where you're just angry and you're right? Like finding those things that work for you that can keep you steady and not neurotic. Not, and if you don't know what neuroticism is, go and look it up. It's very interesting, but it helps you be a healthy individual and to not see things through a jaded point of view. It's very, very, very important.
With all that said, this has been Caleb Wilber of Freedom City. Please check out all of his links in the description. They do some awesome, wonderful work. And if you want to support us, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. If you are feeling extra generous, please be sure to check out the shop and some merchandise with the stickers and the hoodies and shirts with the logo on the front and the first 50 guests, including Mr. Caleb Wilber on the back. With all of that said, we have a guest coming up very soon, JP Mayer. He's the resident music director of the Dutch Apple Theater, I do believe. I'm going to double check that real quick before I slander any further. Yeah. And so he will be on coming up soon. And with all that said, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will see you in a little bit. Goodbye.